Hi, this is Hunt Lyman. I'm the Academic Dean at the Hill School, and this is going to be an online presentation on upper school writing at Hill. And this is hosted by the Education and School Life Committee. The Education and School Life Committee is a subcommittee of the Board of Trustees. Every year they conduct surveys of parents, alums, current students, and from those develop yearly points of focus. And those inform best practice visits to other schools and culminate with forums. Our intention here is to inform parents, to communicate school practices and beliefs. This forum is an attempt to see if this is a convenient way to communicate, but it in no way is meant to replace face-to-face conversations. And we encourage people to come on in and talk to us. I'm going to be talking about in 4 different parts some of our principles and beliefs, our teaching practices, writing development, and then provide illustrations from student writing. I think that everyone understands that writing is an essential academic skill and an essential professional skill. It's one of the most important things that kids can learn by the time they graduate. It's a way to demonstrate knowledge, and it's also a way to communicate and convey understandings. But equally important from a teaching perspective, it's a way to process understandings. And teaching writing and teaching thinking are really inexplicable. You really can't do one without doing the other. Our most important principles of our writing program throughout the school are, first of all, that students should write frequently. One learns to write by writing, not by hearing someone talk about it. Writing is what is most important. But at the same time, that writing needs to be directed, needs to be shaped. Second, students should write in different forms for many different purposes. I'll speak more about that in just a minute. And third, that students should receive specific feedback about their writing. Kids don't learn to write all together at the same time. It's not perfectly orchestrated. Instead, they need specific direction for what they're ready to learn right now. This slide is really meant to illustrate the many different types of writing that are possibilities. These are things that we do all the way through Hill School. And my intention is to break out of the idea that writing is only the 5-paragraph essay or the research paper. Those are very important types of writing, but they're not the only types. And in the upper school, these are examples of typical writing assignments. Certainly they're personal narrative compositions, which are works of about 400 words, true personal experiences that go through a multi-draft process, formal essays and research projects, reviews of articles, original poems and imaginative responses to reading, journals, translations, and of course notes. What my main point here, though, is that certainly writing is a staple of the English curriculum, but it's very, very important in many subject areas. Essays and research projects are basic to history, article reviews and projects in science. Art has journals, translations, and note-taking and presentations in Latin. So we're really writing across the curriculum, and children are involved in writing just about every day, and really often they're involved in many writing projects simultaneously. Probably the most difficult and important lesson to communicate to student writers is that unlike speech, writing can be shaped and molded through a process in definite stages. A writer can brainstorm, organize the ideas, and then after drafting, see them again, revision, then go through a process of editing, and then final proofreading, and finally taking it to publication. So that we want kids to understand that this is a complex task, and the way to complete any complex task is to break it into a series of simpler tasks. And if we can encourage kids to break it down, to see it as something that happens in stages, they're really going to be able to understand much better. Now I want to say a few words about grammar, because grammar is a very tricky term and it means different things to different people. Often when people ask about grammar, they're talking about things such as punctuation, spelling, run-on sentences, apostrophes, usage, and I wouldn't consider any of those grammar. That's not what I mean. Those I would consider conventions of standard written English. And we teach those throughout the 4th through 8th grade through mini lessons to the class, individual conferences, and comments on compositions. Now, formal grammar is taught in a variety of ways too, through language fundamentals in the 6th through 8th grade Latin program, to a lesser extent in terms of formal grammar and language study, and then in an 8th grade grammar course that introduces the 8 parts of speech, the functions of nouns and pronouns, verbals, and phrases and clauses. I would maintain that anyone who understands this grammar knows far more than most college students or adults. In terms of feedback, we try to provide a variety of sources of feedback for students: peer responses, teacher comments, which are often elaborate, evaluations through writing rubrics, which I'll be talking about in the next series, and mini lessons based on student writing. Now, what that means is that if many students in a class have a problem with, say, run-on sentences, we would certainly have a class based on that to many students. But we often find that individual one-on-one attention is necessary for kids at many levels. We also ask all students through the 4th through 8th grade to keep portfolios of their written writing throughout the year so that they can trace their developments as a writer from the beginning of the year to the end. I want to provide an example of a student marked paper so you can see what we do when we respond to student writing. Here is a fairly typical paper. It's been corrected. And you'll see that on the left-hand side here, there are a number of notations. Those indicate things that the student should correct. So for example, proof here means there's a proofreading error somewhere on this line, and P means there's a punctuation error. Now this is a paper that has been corrected. On the other side are numbers that have been circled, and these refer to separate student comments, annotations on the composition. These might be recorded, they might be written on a separate sheet of paper, they might be written right in the margins. But if they're written out on a separate sheet, they would look something like this. So up at the top are explanations of the notations, then individual comments, and a general comment. And then following that, this is a rubric, and I'll be talking about that later as well, where the domains of the writing are laid out, and the student gives scores and the teacher gives a score as well. And this enables us to communicate with students about how accurately they're assessing their work. For example, down here, I thought that the style wasn't quite as strong, whereas I thought the organization was very strong. And this will give us something that we can talk about. I'm going to be going into the rubric on the next session that immediately follows this.